Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our board meeting for Monday, May 31st, 2021. This is Trustee Dawn Danko, and I will be chairing this evening. I'd like to start with our land acknowledgement. The Hamilton Wentworth District School Board acknowledges our presence on ancestral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee Confederacy land as determined by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. The intent of this agreement is for all nations sharing this territory to do so responsibly, respectfully, and sustainably in perpetuity. We respect the long-standing relationships with the local Indigenous communities, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the Six Nations of the Grand River. Before I call our meeting to order, I would like to express our deepest sympathies and condolences to the Indigenous families and communities who are grieving the loss of 215 children whose remains were discovered on the grounds of the Kamloops Indian Residential School. This evidence of the cruelty and genocide perpetrated at Canadian residential schools is heartbreaking. We acknowledge and honor all residential school survivors and Indigenous communities across Turtle Island who are coping with the news of this terrible discovery. Our flags will be lowered until the end of the day on June 8th. This represents 9 days, or 215 hours, 1 hour per each child, to honor the lives of these 215 children.
Joined.
I ask that we spend 2 minutes and 15 seconds in silence to honor these children,
Joined.
reflect on the trauma caused by residential schools that continues to impact Indigenous communities today, and reflect on our commitment to actively work towards reconciliation alongside our Indigenous communities. And for those who just came on, in honor of the loss of 215 children who were discovered, we are going to spend 2 minutes and 15 seconds in silence. I'll ask people to make sure they're on mute, and I will bring us back when that's done. Thank you. At this time, we will play O Canada. Thank you. We'll move to item 3 and go to our meeting roll call. So I'll start at the top of the alphabet. Trustee Archer, and are you on the line?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Bingham?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Buck?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Dees?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Galindo?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Johnstone?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Miller?
Present. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Mulholland? Trustee Mulholland?
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Tutt?
Present.
Thank you. Student Trustee Zakar?
Present.
Thank you. And I have regrets from Trustee Pekin-Miller, Student Trustee Hessler, and Segawana-Galverdat-Segi. At this time, we move to item 4, Profiling Excellence. I'll turn it over to the Director to start us off.
Through the chair, thank you. Before I pass on to Superintendent Sharon Stefanian, trustees will see in their package this evening we are honoring staff, but there's one person I'd like just to say a few words before I pass on to Sharon, and that's Superintendent Peggy Blair. I want to thank her for her ongoing leadership and pushing us and disrupting our thinking about meeting the needs of students with special needs and how to look at historical practices and how to unpack some of the data to really see if what we're doing is serving the needs of families and students and trying to improve our practice over time. And she sits at the Ministry Advisory Council of Special Education and chairs as an incredible voice for the province and for other superintendents and for families and students across the province. So I want to personally thank her, but I'll pass it over to Superintendent Stefanian, who will provide a little more detail for all our staff recipients this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Figueredo. And I'll just do a sound check to make sure that I'm coming through okay.
Yes, you are.
Okay, perfect. And as trustees are aware, this is the time each month where we have an opportunity to celebrate the accomplishments of students and staff, both within the walls of HWDSB schools and classrooms, but also within the broader community. And I'm very excited this evening to be introducing you to one of our students from Westdale Secondary School and a number of our staff this evening. So I'd like to begin by recognizing Ivor Hathaway, a student from Westdale Secondary School this evening. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Ivor and his work that has received recognition with respect to a Sharon Enkin Student Award. So as I begin to speak about Ivor, can I just have a round of applause for Ivor and congratulating him on this recognition. And for our recipients this evening, I will mention that it is a little different, that we are not all together in the boardroom and have the ability to be able to congratulate you face-to-face, but I will share with you that our time this evening is equally heartfelt as we want to take time to recognize you and to celebrate you and the great work that you're doing. So by way of context, people may be familiar with the Sharon Enkin Awards. They are awards that have been provided in combination with the Hamilton Jewish Federation as well as the Enkin family. And they have historically been awards that have recognized the contributions of educators with respect to Holocaust learning. 2 years ago, the Enkin family and the Hamilton Jewish Federation expanded that reach to include students. And so 2021, the year in which we're recognizing Ivor for, was only the second year in which there were student recognitions that were available. The Sharon Enkin Student Award on the Holocaust is open to all students from grades 10 to 12, and the applicants are asked to respond to a question using any medium of their choice. And the question that was asked was that although Auschwitz was liberated 75 years ago, The lessons of the Holocaust are more important than ever in our world. Why is it so important in 2021 for young people to learn the lessons that the Holocaust shows us? And it's my honor this evening to recognize Ivor for his outstanding achievement and contributions. Ivor is in grade 11 at Westdale Secondary School, and his submission for the Sharon Enkin Award was a poem as well as a video. And together they showcase the importance of remembrance and the fact that our individual voice is central to our ability to impact and to change the world, and that each of us have the ability to be able to do that uniquely through how we bring our voice forward and how we share our thoughts, our passion, and our commitment. Ivor provided a depth of understanding and a sense of purpose that has had a profound impact on everyone who has had the opportunity to read his poem as well as to see his video. And that's the reason that we are recognizing Ivor this evening. Ivor's 2021 entry for the Sharon Enkin Award was also previewed recently at the Hamilton Jewish Federation through a community event that was held in April. Again, a huge accomplishment and demonstrating Ivor's commitment to human rights and equity and inclusion. So please join me in congratulating Ivor on his Sharon Enkin Award accomplishment and on his Profiling Excellence Award this evening. You can turn your mics on for a moment to clap. I'd now like to move forward with respect to recognition for my colleague, Peggy Blair. Our Director Figueredo has provided a great deal of information already, so I will just highlight that we within HWDSB have the incredible opportunity to experience on a daily basis Peggy's contributions, passion, and commitment to supporting young people who are accessing special education supports and services. And we know that her leadership, acting as chair for the Ministry of Education's Advisory Council on Special Education, is not only going to benefit students locally, but also will have a huge impact on opportunities for students across the province. So please join me in congratulating Peggy Blair on her work as chair for MACSE and on her Profiling Excellence Award this evening. Hard to do it. Next up this evening, I would like to recognize an educator from Ancaster Secondary School, Venetia Fletcher, and we're recognizing Venetia this evening for her work during the recent Mental Health Week and the work that she coordinated not locally for Ancaster Secondary School, but that work that ultimately impacted over 900 secondary students within Hamilton Wentworth District School Board. Venetia is described by her principal as an educator of excellence who takes on many roles within the school. She is a teacher, she's a student success lead, she is a teacher advisor for many clubs within the schools, and she is the lead for the Student Ambassador Program. She's assistant head of art at Ancaster Secondary, a strong equity advocate, runs workshops for students, staff, has been part of workshop learning for trustees. She is a theater production specialist and takes on a very strong role in leading mental health and well-being at the school. Most recently, Venetia worked with students in her class to plan for the activities that were supporting students at Ancaster High during Mental Health Week. And she worked with the students on creating a series of workshops and lunch and learns and photo challenges, dances, webinars over the course of that week. And the culminating activity was a day-long event that involved over 900 students from many of our secondary schools. It was an opportunity for the students to virtually come together on Microsoft Teams Live to learn about finding their own voice and empowering them. And their guest speaker, one of their keynote speakers, was an HWDSB graduate, Rodney DeVerlis, who was also co-founder of Black Lives Matter. And then there was a community-based panel that engaged the students around identity and voice and purpose, really speaking to that piece of identity and well-being and mental health. Absolutely a phenomenal undertaking. And what was even, even more profound was that the students ran everything. These students were the voice and the face of all of the activity that was happening so seamlessly. Venetia's work had happened before the day, behind the scenes, in working with the students and preparing the students to be able to take this day on. We often talk about the importance of our priorities within the board being integrated and not being seen as silos or separate pieces. And Venetia, in working with her students, demonstrated how so seamlessly you can take the board priorities of equity and mental health and well-being and bring them together so seamlessly and so purposefully and ultimately with a huge impact on many students. We truly appreciate all of Venetia's passion, commitment, and leadership, not only at Ancaster Secondary, but certainly beyond. On behalf of all of us, thank you, Venetia, on an incredibly successful Mental Health Week and district-wide assembly, and congratulations on your Profiling Excellence Award this evening.
Thank you.
And last but not least this evening, I would like to introduce everyone to Ryan and Laurie Swackhammer. And we're going to be talking about Ryan and Laurie and the incredible work that they do not only within the school, but also within the broader community together. Ryan is a teacher at Dundas Central, and Laurie is a teacher at Gaudet School. And both of them are described as being extremely involved in their school communities, focusing on students at the center of everything that they do, always being available to take on whatever roles are necessary within their schools, because making a difference for children and in children's lives is a priority and central to everything that they undertake. Both Laurie and Brian take on a number of additional leadership roles within their school and also within the larger community. So their principals talked about the fact that you can always find them coaching. You can find them organizing holiday hampers for families in need. They're involved in mentoring new educators by teaching additional qualification courses and working with new teachers within their schools as they are learning those ways in which to connect and to engage with students. In addition to that, Laurie and Ryan also serve as emergency foster parents for children who are in risk within the Hamilton community. And they are described by those who know them as being unbelievably hardworking, extremely compassionate, and models of excellence as leaders within the board. In particular, their willingness to come to the aid of some of the most vulnerable members of our community, even in the midst of a pandemic, have made them inspirational to everyone who knows them, particularly the peers that they have the opportunity to work with, as well as the larger community. They're described as being incredibly humble and doing what they do because they care immensely about children, both within their classroom and their schools and within their broader community. So this evening, we'd like to thank and congratulate Laurie and Ryan for all of their hard work and their commitment in centering children and supporting children both within HWDSB as well as giving a safe, warm place and space for children who are vulnerable within our community. Thank you for all that you do, and congratulations on your Profiling Excellence Award this evening. Thank you. Madam Chair, this concludes Profiling Excellence this evening.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Stefanian, and thank you to our special guests for joining us today. We're so thrilled to hear about your awards, the work that you've been doing that impact our students, and I have heard that we will be posting access to Ivor's poem and video, so stay tuned for that, and I know we all look forward to seeing that if you haven't seen it already. So thank you again. I'll give our guests time to leave the call. I'm sure you don't want to stay on for the rest of the board meeting, but thank you so much, and we look forward to saying congratulations when we see you in person again.
Thank you very much.
Laurie.
Left.
Venetia Fletcher.
Left.
Ryan Swackhammer.
Left.
Okay, I'll move along to approval of the agenda item 5 for trustees. Trustee Tutt, if you could move the agenda, seconded by Trustee Mulholland. Are there any amendments to the agenda? And is anyone opposed to approving the agenda? Hearing none, I'll move along to item 6, declarations of conflict of interest. Do we have any conflicts of interest to declare today? Hearing none, I'll move to item 7, confirmation of the minutes from May 17th, 2021. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, we'll move to item 8, which is correspondence. Trustees will see in their package there are 3 different items of correspondence from A. Purnell, C. Gaudet, and T. Collins. I'd be looking for a motion to receive and file. And I'll ask Trustee Bingham if you could move that, and seconded by Trustee Deese. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, is anyone opposed to the motion to receive and file the 3 items of correspondence? Hearing none, that passes. We'll move on to reports from Trustee Special Committees. Item 9 is our Governance Committee report from May 19th, 2021. I'll turn it over to Trustee Tutt to bring forward the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to bring the report from the May 19th, 2021 Governance Committee. Trustees will see in their packages there were 2 action items that were discussed on that night and 1 monitoring item. Under action item A, trustees will see that the first item that was discussed was board meeting dates for the upcoming school year. So it's September 2021 to June 2022. Staff presented meeting dates for the Governance Committee to review for the next school year. And after there was some discussion with regards to whether any of the days that are proposed, if they overlap with any religious days of significance, staff took that back and took another look and made sure that there was no overlap with any significant day or religious day, or religious observance day, sorry. Staff did not uncover any conflict with the proposed days. I won't go through all the dates there. They're in before the trustees. A motion was made by Trustee Johnstone through the Governance Committee that recommended that those dates be approved, and the committee unanimously carried that motion. Moving along to action item B, there was an update given with regards to the Board of Trustee Handbook. And this was in particular in response to recommendations made by the external investigator regarding the trustees' handbook. There were a number of amendments that were made by the Governance Committee. I won't go through all the recommendations because I know trustees have read that and it's in their material again. There are three documents. Document A there in your package, Document B, Document C, starting with Document A, which is the role of the school board chair. After a long meeting and discussion, a motion was made and supported by trustees, a motion by Trustee Danko, that the Governance Committee recommend that the following amendment, the statement regarding chair of the Board of Duties, that the chair of the board have authority for these duties as granted by the Board of Trustees. That was carried unanimously. As well, Trustee Miller had proposed an additional amendment under the duties to the chair, which is at paragraph 13 there in Trustee's package in Document A. And it included a reference to whom to collaborate with and adding a term for students. I'll go through that very quickly. Bullet 13 specifically says to provide advice and support to all members of the board, including student trustees and the Segawana Gaudet, in collaboration with the student trustee mentor, table mentors, and designated staff. When requested, the chair is not responsible for reviewing comments, questions, or statements in advance of the meeting unless requested by a member. However, all members' comments, questions, or statements are expected to be issue-based, on topic, not personal, respectful of all members of the board, as well as students and staff. That motion was carried on the following division of votes: Trustee Danko, Miller, Johnston, and Peck, and is opposed by Trustee Galendo. Moving along, the committee also discussed submitting written notice of motion or adding an item to an agenda. That is Document B there in your packages. A motion was made again by Chair Danko through the Governance Committee that recommended the following amendment to add a paragraph regarding student trustees and the Segawana Gaudet, submitting notices of motion and those motions being sponsored by specifically an elected ward trustee. What was carried was that student trustees and the Segawana Gaudet are able to suggest a motion on matters before the board or one of its committees. However, this must be done with sponsorship of an elected ward trustee. Submitted notices of motions must include the name of the elected ward trustee who is sponsoring the motion. The email submission must be sent by a student trustee or ward trustee, but both shall be copied on email submission. So this was in line with further codifying and clarifying our processes as they relate to bringing in those notice of motions and motions when they should be sponsored by a ward trustee. As well, there was a motion brought by Trustee Miller through the Governance Committee that recommended the following addition related to adding notice of motion to the agenda after the deadline. And that motion carried unanimously, which specifically covered that the chair of the board, in consultation with the vice chair, will have the discretion on whether to accept late submissions and direct staff to add to the appropriate agenda, but not later than 48 hours prior to the meeting start time. As well, there was a motion brought by Trustee Galendo through the Governance Committee, which recommended the following related to submissions being reviewed. Motion was carried unanimously, and it specifically states that it should be noted that all notices of motion should be reviewed by the Director, Officer of Trustee Services, the Chair of the Board, or designate to ensure that the submission is in accordance with the procedure outlined and does not contravene the Education Act and any other legislation. Feedback may be provided to the member submitting the notice of motion related to providing clarification on statements made and actions requested. It was also recommended to staff to add clarity to the example provided in the handbook regarding notice of motion submissions, to include reference to the sponsoring elected ward trustees when it is a student trustee or a Segawana Gaudet submitting the notice of motion. Staff have completed this update. Moving along to Document C in the trustee package there, that specifically dealt with the role of student trustees. And there, staff advised that although there was not a recommendation from the external investigator, this section did require an update based on the change in how students are elected to the position of student trustee, as well as how the Segawana Gaudet is selected. Kudos to staff for being proactive in bringing this forward. there was a motion brought by Trustee Danko to the Governance Committee that recommended the following amendments with regards to this section. Specifically, with regards to the number of students, the HWDSB will have 2 student trustees and 1 Gaudet who will represent the interest and voice of all students across the district to the best of their ability. When we look towards disqualifications, a student is not qualified to be elected or act as a student trustee if he or she is serving a sentence of imprisonment in a penal or correctional institute. Student who ceases to be qualified to act as a student trustee will resign from the position. As well, with regards to the selection process and vacancies, 2 student trustees will be elected by their peers, with an election being held no later than the last day of February on an annual basis. 1 Gaudet will rise up to the CC rows no later than the last day of February on an annual basis. The board determines that a vacancy shall be filled. It shall be filled by a by-election or an appointment, depending on the vacancy. Again, looking at specifics with regard to the motions and notice of motions, this is a new section that was added. Student trustees and the Gaudet are eligible to recommend a motion or submit notices of motions with the sponsorship of an elected ward trustee. For information on submitting a notice of motion, we're going to refer people to the governance procedures, submitting a written notice of motion, or adding an item to agenda within the handbook. During a meeting, students may, with the sponsorship of an elected trustee, request an amendment to a motion already on the floor, or may request a motion to be in response to an item on the agenda. This section was unanimously carried by members of the committee. Staff also advised that the appendices which accompany this section of the handbook have been updated and no additional recommendations were made by the Governance Committee. Moving along to the final item, which was a monitoring item, Part C, Governance Review and Recommendations. The Director advised the Governance Committee that the second RFP for a governance reviewer had been completed without a successful tender being awarded, as there has not been such a review done in our sector, with a strong Indigenous, anti-oppression, and anti-racist lens. Staff in procurement and risk services are reaching out to a third-party reviewer through a single-source process to determine whether or not they may be able to conduct and complete a governance review. Once the third-party reviewer has agreed, an update will be provided to all trustees at the May 31st board meeting. In September, staff will return with an update for committee regarding milestones and due dates related to the governance review action plan based on the third-party reviewer's expertise and guidance. Staff provided an update and updated for the committee on the governance action plan posted to our website, noting that the additional recommendations from the FNMI Community Advisory Committee has been added. Dates related to the governance review have been changed to June 2022, and notes on discussions held at the committee meeting this evening related to some of the recommendations. The updated action plan can be found on the following. There's a link there in the trustees' packages. And in short, I just want to thank members of the committee for doing some great work. It was a lengthy meeting, and there's some good amendments and clarifications coming out. And with that, Madam Chair, that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Tutt, for the detailed report. And so I'll be looking for a motion to approve the report. So moved by Trustee Tutt, seconded by Trustee Johnstone as a committee member. Before we go to questions from trustees, there is a note that there would be an update to trustees regarding the governance review for the third party in terms of item C. So perhaps let's get the update for that item, and then we'll go through roll call to see if there are questions from trustees. To the Director.
So thank you through the Chair. This evening, trustees would have received an email that has a slide deck for my verbal update. So I'm excited to announce that the governance review will be conducted by Wentworth Strategy Group, which Catherine Rezeau is the lead project consultant. The team assembled has significant relevant experience with education, our local educational ecosystem, equity, diversity, inclusion, anti-racism, anti-oppression, anti-colonialism, and governance. The team really believes that the expertise required to conduct this review is broad, deep, and specific, and as such, they have intentionally structured a very experienced team with local context and globally derived competency. And I guess I'll highlight again, this work to this level has not been done in our sector. The key activities for this group, before I introduce who the group is, are threefold. One, a comprehensive governance review through EDI and anti-racism, anti-oppression, and anti-colonial lens. Two, update on policy frameworks, so a revised HWDS Board of Trustees Handbook. And the third item is trustee training and professional development. The next section I'd like to highlight is Envisioned Timelines. At this point, as we're working through finalizing the contract, the governance action plan that was highlighted in Section C and the recommendations from the third-party investigator will all be shared with this group so they can begin the project as of June 2021. And then we have key milestones, the project planning and alignment in conjunction with HWDSB leadership, including like our chair and vice chair, will continue to connect through June and August as they're going to do an assessment of our governance action plan and the recommendations, and then come back in September, phase one, to the governance committee with any kind of revised timelines based on the comprehensive work that needs to be completed. Based on their proposal, they hope to have a draft report February 2022, and then as they update the policy framework as phase two, that'll be during February 2022 to June 2022. Trustee training and development program, phase three, to begin this fall, September 2021 to June 2022. And the project completion and submission of final report is June 2022. And as we know, as we get deep into this work, these timelines might be reviewed, but all updates will go through the governance committee. And I'd like to introduce the team. As trustees can see, Catherine Razzo is the lead project consultant. She's internationally recognized practitioner, consultant, author, and speaker on board governance based in Hamilton. Catherine has more than 30 years of experience in the nonprofit sector as a CEO, board member, and highly skilled facilitator consulting with more than 600 boards around the world, and has published many popular governance books based on her practice. Second to this team, people might know locally as a project consultant, Leo Johnson. Leo is an experienced nonprofit executive, entrepreneur, human rights specialist, public speaker, and United Nations fellow. He is currently the executive director of Empowerment Squared and senior advisor, equity and diversity and inclusion and nonprofit management with Wentworth Strategy Group. The third core person in this group is Troy Hill. Troy has many positions in education. Troy Hill is Mohawk from Six Nations of the Grand River, where he is an educator. He has been included the vice principal and learning resource teacher. Troy recently completed his master's in education, focusing on cultural competency through the lens of Indigenous knowledge. He participated and facilitated policy writing for accreditation courses offered through the Ontario College of Teachers. Along with his policy writing experience, he recently co-authored psychopathology in the offspring of Indigenous parents with mental health challenges. And we're excited that he'll be part of this team. And the fourth member of this core team is Dr. Bonney. He teaches human rights and history at the Department of History at the Center for Peace and Studies. He also teaches at McMaster Arts and Science Program and the Institute of Globalization and the Human Condition. He is the director of the McMaster Center for Human Rights and Restorative Justice. He is previously Associate Dean of Research and Acting Associate Vice President of Research at McMaster University, and has also authored many books. We're proud that we were able to single source this level of expertise from our local community. And again, this is the core group. And as they do their assessment of obtaining our documents, our governance plan over the summer, working with the key leadership team, they've indicated that there might be other people that could join the group as need fit based on what emerges as they do their assessment and see our artifacts. So they'll be responsive, but this will be the 4 key leaders who will be facilitating this work. Through the chair. Thank you.
Thank you to the director. So what I'll do right now is go through the roll call for trustees. I know there's a lot before you on the governance report, and we've just had an update. If you weren't sure where to see a visual for that update, there is a governance review update that was sent just before the meeting, so you can grab that from your email. So I'll start with Trustee Archer. Did you have any questions or comments?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Bingham?
No questions, but I do want to say thank you to the director and the staff for jumping on this so quickly and being very, very thorough in what it is they're doing. And I'm very thrilled over the team as well that's been put together for the review. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Buck?
Yes, I do actually have a question. On page 9.2, under disqualifications, it says a student who ceases to be qualified to act as a student trustee shall resign from the position. And I just wondered about that word, if resign, that to me indicates an action on their part that they would need to perhaps submit some kind of written document to resign. I wonder if another word, maybe the word forfeit or something, the student trustee shall forfeit the position, for example, might actually be a bit more appropriate.
Thank you, Trustee Buck. I'll go through the director and possibly to Trustee Officer Miller to see if there is a source for that, the language that's been used.
So thank you through the chair, as I'm here with Trustee Officer Miller. The language that's been presented is the language that comes right out of the Education Act, and that's why we did lift it there and kept the language consistent with the Education Act, which is the word resign. Through the chair.
Thank you. Trustee Buck?
Thank you very much for that succinct answer. Very much appreciated. This just a big thank you to the committee for the work that you've been doing on this. I think we are certainly on the right track with these changes. So no further questions, but a big thanks to the group.
Thank you. Trustee Dees?
No questions, and just echoing what other trustees have said, and that's good to see that this work is being carried out and the changes are being made. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Galindo?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm extremely excited for the work that's to begin with this governance review. I have to say that in my eyes, it's revolutionary.
Trustee Galindo, I'm just going to interrupt. I'm having a really hard time hearing you. I'm not sure if you can adjust maybe where your microphone is.
How's the air quality, or not the air quality,
That's
the sound
better.
quality now? Is it? Okay.
Yes, it's much better. Thanks.
Thank you. As I was saying, extremely excited for the work that's about to begin with this governance review. I think it's in many ways groundbreaking, and in terms of how thorough it will be across the province. I do want to thank the Chair of Governance Committee, Trustee Tutt. I'd like to extend gratitude to the Director and the Trustee Officer for the work and leadership on this. I think many boards will look to the work that we're doing here to model themselves after. So I'm happy with the direction. I'm happy with the consultants that we've selected. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Johnstone?
Thank you. With regards to the update that Trustee Tutt had provided, all of my comments were provided earlier during the governance review in terms of changes, and I'll just note that I also am looking forward to engaging in the work with the consultants that have been identified. As some other trustees have mentioned, this is work that has not been done by any other board in Ontario yet. So I'm thankful that this work is being done, and I hope that not only will it benefit this board the entire board with all of our 7,000 staff, 50,000 students, and of course our 11 trustees, but that it will also act as a tool and beacon for boards across the province and around the world. This was important work and timely work, and it's unfortunate that it's not work that had been done previously by any other board, but I am thankful for the opportunity to learn from these individuals. I'm familiar with two of the individuals, and I'm looking forward to getting to know the other half of the team as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Miller?
Thank you, and through the chair, no question. Just a couple of comments. I'm very excited to see this board undertaking this work. We did have a very lengthy governance meeting. This is very particular and specific work that needs to happen, and we had a lot of really good discussion around, the responsibilities of each board member in a variety of capacities. But I wanted to highlight that I'm really thankful for the ongoing work around how we support our student trustees and our Saguanagadaludats in the future, how we can support their work, their advocacy, how we support, all of those individual students who will be stepping into those roles, very much in a leadership role amongst their peers, but also, how we will be able to be growing from them and supporting the strength of student voice and the importance of the student experience here at the HWDSB. It's integral to, I think, everything that we need to do, and I'm particularly glad to see that area of our governance structure being fleshed out for clarity and for diligence. And again, just as other folks have echoed this evening, this team sounds fantastic. I'm really appreciative that we've got a lot of different perspectives present, but also some very local talent, which is important because I think that's very specific to us as a board and our communities that we are hoping to serve. I am surprised that this has yet to be done at the provincial level, but I hope that we can, break ground and really set the stage for an anti-oppressive, anti-racist, anti-colonial framework for governance. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Trustee Miller. Trustee Mulholland?
No questions.
Thank you. Student Trustee Zakar?
No questions.
Thank you. And Trustee Tutt, you did move the report, but did you have any additional comments you wanted to make?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just very quickly, I think everybody beautifully captured a lot of what's been happening at governance. Just want to thank the members, part of the committee, that have showed some leadership. It's not easy conversations, I know, but I think it's important work. It's not easy work, but as committee members work through this, I think it only helps us address some of the challenges and further clarifies processes and helps us adopt a more anti-oppressive, anti-racist framework. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I guess just to put myself on the speakers list, I think most of what I was going to say has already been said, but just to echo the thanks to staff for the work that went into the recommendations for revisions to the trustee handbook. I know that was significant work, and to the committee for really robust and critical discussion around that. I think it's been really helpful for me to see how complex and how deep this work will be for the Governance Review Committee or the group that's coming in. And I really appreciate that we have a group, the Wentworth Strategy Group, that has both local and global experience and expertise. I think that's going to really be beneficial to us as they bring forward their experience and expertise in all of the different areas in anti-colonial, anti-racist, anti-oppression, and governance, because they're all the key pieces that we've learned over this past year that we truly need to look at our practices, our governance structures, our policies more closely with respect to those frameworks. So thank you to staff and to trustees for the work so far, and I really look forward to improving our governance practices and improving our leadership and our actions as trustees as we engage in both the review and training with this group. So thank you. Now to the motion that has been moved and seconded. Do I have anyone opposed? Hearing none, the approval of the report passes. Next, we'll turn to item 10, which is our Finance and Facilities report from May 13th. We'll start with that report, and then we'll carry on with the May 20 report once that one's completed. Over to Vice Chair Glendo.
Thank you. Through the chair, it's my pleasure to bring forward the Finance and Facilities Committee reports for both May 13th and May 20th, as you mentioned. I'll first bring the monitoring items discussed during the meeting that took place on May 13th, followed by the action item. We discussed item B, COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream Funding Update. Trustees will remember that last month, the Government of Canada announced plans to invest $525.2 million towards projects through the COVID-19 Resilience Stream of Investment in Canada Infrastructure Program. In addition, the Government of Ontario confirmed its contribution of more than $131.3 million to projects across the province. The funding announced includes HVAC upgrades and improvements to air quality, support for physical distancing for students and staff, investment in technology to help support remote learning, support for health and safety initiatives such as installing dishwashing stations, hand washing stations or touchless faucets and soap dispensers. Our board was successful in securing $17,220,500 in funding for projects related to the parameters I just mentioned. Deadline for completing those projects is December 31st of this year, and projects at our board include bottle filling stations at 86 locations, touchless door operators at 86 locations, infrared water faucets at 36 locations, ventilation improvements, including new rooftop units or classroom unit ventilations at 30 locations. Staff have engaged consultants where required and are in the process of securing all those items for delivery and installation across the board to meet the deadline requirements. We also discussed item C, where the Strategic Direction Report on School Renewal was discussed. Staff presented a review of the 2019-2020 implementation of the board's annual capital plan and the current implementation of the 2020-2021 annual capital plan. With regards to the 2019-2020 school renewal plan, it identified one target that at least 25% fewer schools will be identified as being in poor condition by the year 2020. We are proud to announce our board has met that target. In 2016, 21 schools were identified in poor condition, and as of August 31st of 2020, there were 14 schools on that list. Therefore, the board was successful in reducing the number of schools in poor condition by 33%. Furthermore, the 2020-2021 school renewal plan identified one target that at least 25% fewer schools will be identified as being in poor condition by the year 2024. Staff have reviewed the strategies that have been identified to achieve this target. Staff are also changing the assessment of a school in poor condition to include the following parameters as discussed at previous meetings. They include equity and accessibility, alignment to identified facility benchmarks, CFI, also known as Facility Condition Index, and a public consultation component. Staff continue to implement the capital plan as school consolidations are completed and new schools are opened. The assessment of schools continues to improve. The upcoming school year represents the first year of the new target, and the 5th year of the Elementary and Secondary Facility Benchmark Plan. Staff are in various stages of completion with regards to the projects identified for the 5 years, and they will provide quarterly monitoring updates and reports on ongoing capital projects. We are on track to meet the target. We discussed item D. We received a letter from the Rosedale Home and School Association and School Council letter that was originally received at board with regards to adding the Rosedale Gym to our list of capital priority submission. The correspondence was received and filed at Finance and Facilities. Staff did acknowledge that we received the letter and that the Rosedale Gym has been included on the list for capital priority submission. Trustees may in fact recall that the gym was moved up the list of priorities. And we also discussed item E, where staff presented a report that showed the March 31st, 2021 enrollment is 128.75 higher than projected. March 31st is one of the 2 count dates that is used by the Ministry of Education to calculate the GSN, along with October 31st. Enrollment data was provided on a school-by-school basis to trustees and, of course, the ministry. And with regards to item F, staff provided a recap of budget decisions made to date. Staff originally presented a conservative budget that resulted in a projected $9 million deficit. After reviewing GSN and PPF, the board is in a position to be able to add back many of those positions while still presenting a balanced budget. And with regards to the action item discussed at that board meeting, staff reported that in the past, the board has automatically carried forward all school budgets of up to 10%. Any carry forward greater than 10% required board approval. This report was usually presented in June of that school year. As a result of the pandemic, the ministry has closed schools on 2 occasions, and school staff have not been able to spend their school budgets or are looking for ways to spend it and get goods delivered. Staff do not want to encourage the purchase of goods that have been delivered and stored. Staff does not want goods to be sent to the homes of employees because of the closures of schools or the risk of them being turned away from central delivery centers. This would create difficulty and expense in getting the goods to individual schools after the fact. So allowing schools to carry forward their budgets automatically will ensure that schools are only ordering what is required at this time. This action item is very similar to the one that we passed at this time last year at the start of the pandemic. So on the motion of Trustee Buck, Finance and Facility recommends that the carry forward of all school budgets are left over from the 2020-2021 to the following school year be approved. And with that, I carry the following action item, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So a motion to approve the report from May 13th for Finance and Facilities, seconded by Trustee Buck. I'll turn to trustees and ask you to unmute yourself if you'd like to ask any questions or make any comments.
It's Trustee Deese. I have just a correction.
Go ahead, Trustee Deese.
Item D, Rosedale Home and School Association and School Council letter. It says that I made the recommendation and I wasn't at the Finance and Facilities meeting.
Sorry, Trustee Deese, that would be at our board meeting when the correspondence was referred to Finance and Facilities.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
That's fine. Thanks. Bye.
Any other comments or questions? If you can unmute yourself and I'll add you to the speakers list. Hearing none, is anyone opposed to approving the May 13th Finance and Facilities report? Hearing none, I'll turn it back to Vice Chair Glindo for the May 20th report.
Thank you. Through the chair, a very heavy meeting indeed, content heavy. I will now move on to the meeting that took place on May 20th, the Finance and Facilities report. I'll start with the monitoring item. Again, this time there was only one. We received an update on the long-term facilities master plan, and this was the annual update with regards to the year 2021-2022. Staff presented the annual update. Our mandate at our board is one where we are committed to providing equitable, affordable, and sustainable learning facilities for students to address the numerous facets related to this mandate and to provide clear direction. Our board, led by Facilities Management Department, produced a long-term facilities master plan to guide toward achieving sustainable facilities. This is a fluid document with embedded links to websites and reports that are updated on a regular basis. I don't believe the document was attached to our package here tonight, but trustees can find it either on our website or in the Finance and Facilities package that was sent out for that meeting. The goal, of course, is to ensure that the Long-Term Facilities Master Plan has current and relevant information beyond the date of its publication. The document is broken down into three main sections, which include accommodation and planning, capital projects, and facility operations, representing each of the three divisions that make up the Facilities Management Department. On April 19th, at the April 19th board meeting, trustees received and approved the accommodation strategy schedule. The schedule indicates a Ministry of Education implemented moratorium on accommodation reviews for the upcoming school year. All future accommodation reviews have not been scheduled and are identified as remaining. On the motion of Trustee Johnstone, the Finance and Facilities Committee requested that a staff follow up with additional demographic information that corresponds to the building condition of a school, including student populations of the three categories of the facility assessment classification. On the motion of Trustee Johnstone, the Finance and Facilities Committee requested that staff also explore and report back by June 2022 with options and feasibility of reinstating KISS and drops at HWDSB elementary school design guidelines. So those would be action items, I suppose, that were also included in this report. And the main action item, as discussed, is with regards to our budget. Staff provided information, of course, on funding sources such as PPF funding and COVID funding through the GSN and PPF. We discussed the revised budget position and staff recommended add-backs while still achieving a balanced budget. Staff presented various scenarios using COVID funding and up to 1% of the board's operational budget from reserves to lower elementary class sizes for the 2021-22 school year to promote distancing and learning recovery. After some discussion on the motion of Trustee Danko, the committee recommends that staff use up to $6 million from reserves to reduce elementary class sizes for the upcoming school year. And with that, I submit the report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Galindo. And just for trustees, in case there's perhaps some clarity needed, remember that trustee committees can direct staff through motion by committee. That doesn't need to be approved by board. So that's why we see two motions under monitoring items, because that was at the committee level, and we have an action item for the board to approve. So the motion to approve the report moved by Trustee Galindo, seconded by Trustee Tutt. I'll turn to trustees. I'll go through the roll call just to make sure people don't have questions, and I'll go in reverse order. Student Trustee Zakar, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you. Do you have any questions or comments? Sorry, that was Student Trustee Zakar.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Tutt?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Mulholland?
No questions.
Thank you. Trustee Miller?
No specific questions to the report. I will just say that I am concerned that we are yet again in a position where we will be using our reserve dollars to address class sizes for the 2021-22 year. We've mentioned it before, but I still feel like it needs re-mentioning that it would have been really, it would be, very appreciated and responsible, frankly, for the ministry to be providing direct funding to school boards to make sure that our class sizes are appropriate, given that we will still be in some version of a COVID-19, scenario come September. So thank you to the committee for the work on this. Both of these reports have been very detail and issue heavy, but I see the validity of the proposed recommendation, but I'm very concerned that we are yet again accessing funding that is meant to be for emergency scenarios for class sizes. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Miller. Trustee Johnstone.
Thank you. Through the chair, these were comments that I made at the Finance and Facilities meeting, but I do want to echo them again for the benefit of the entire Board of Trustees. And some of the comments have already been noted by my fellow peers and fellow members of Finance and Facilities. But just noting that while the funding is greatly appreciated in terms of the GSNs, and while it is welcome news, I won't say good news, I'll call it welcome news, that we can, that boards have been given approval to use, to go into deficit in order to address, I guess, needs, pandemic-related needs. So in our case, in our board, looking to not only reduce class sizes, to encourage and ensure that we're able to provide social distancing between our students and staff, but also to invest in closing gaps in student learning and achievement. While all of that is appreciated, as noted by some of the, previous speakers, our board will need to go into, into our reserves in order to address, in order to meet our local needs. It is a concern that there is not a standard being set across the province. When we think about public health and when we think about student learning and achievement, there should be a provincial standard. Our board is in a fortunate position where we do have funds available to us in order to make these types of investments. But not every single school board across the province is in a position where they are able to do that, or where they are able to make an investment of up to 1% of their reserve funds. They, because their reserves are, their boards are smaller and their reserves are smaller, the impact is far less. And there does need to be some sort of provincial standard across the province in these matters. I'll further state that it is, in order to meet the needs of our students today, we are taking away from our students of tomorrow. Our board will be required to pay back our own funds, our reserve funds. And so when we look at the impact, this is wrong. I think that if we are serious provincially about having a recovery-oriented approach for our students and ensuring that our students receive the best education and that their learning needs are met and that their health and safety needs are met, then we do need to have a provincial standard set. That being said, I will note that especially with regards to the funding with GSNs, the announcement there was welcome, and I greatly appreciate all of the hard work that our staff has done to fully analyze our local needs and to ensure that we are finding ways to meet our local needs through our budget process. So thank you to our staff. And that concludes my remarks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Johnstone. Trustee Dees?
Thank you. To the chair, I think it's echo the concerns that have already been laid out there, just about how this will impact us and on it being inequitable. But the other question. Ashley, sorry. The other question I wanted to ask was in regards to the reinstating of the kiss and drops in our school, in our elementary school design. Traffic and drop-offs continues to be a big problem at a lot of our schools. So it looks like, from what I'm understanding here, is that these were dropped. When were these dropped? When was this sort of dropped off? And could you maybe expand a little bit more on the kiss and rides, or kiss and drops? Sorry.
Thank you. Through the director to Associate Director Zucker, are you able to comment?
Thank you, and through the chair, this was something that was put into place prior to 2015, and I'm not exactly sure of the date, but I can bring back more information if necessary.
Thank you. Trustee Dees?
Sorry, was it 2015? Is that what I heard? It wasn't quite clear.
Yes.
Okay. So it wasn't that long ago then that we then that was changed, or we weren't using that. And I think it is important that we do look at that, because, like I said, I know in a number of areas and in a number of schools, it's a safety issue as well, with parents dropping kids off. And I know a number of schools have had to shuffle around because some interfered with bus lanes and all kinds of things. And I know there has been problems. So I appreciate that we're going to be looking at that again. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Buck?
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Bingham?
No questions, and pretty much all the comments are right on. And there's a lot to deal with, but we have to deal with what's directly in front of us right now. So thank you to staff for everything you're doing.
Thank you. Trustee Archer?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Thank you. And I believe I started with Student Trustee Zakar. Trustee Galindo, you brought the report. Did you have any further comments?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. And so I again would echo what we've already heard, the importance of heading into a year of recovery for learning where we're still likely to be in some kind of COVID context. I do believe it's important that we provide an investment because we've been given the authority to do so by the ministry where we can, but certainly the advocacy from chairs across the board does continue for the ministry to consider funding class sizes that are lower, and we will continue to do that advocacy work. So I will also just echo the thanks to staff for the work that we've seen that's in both of the Finance and Facilities reports tonight, but certainly for the work done through the budget and for bringing the different scenarios forward to trustees to consider when we were looking at options for reducing elementary class sizes and also considering the other costs that would be related to COVID that we need to budget for. So with that, we have the report moved to be approved, and that's been seconded. Is anyone opposed? Hearing none, that passes, and we'll move to reports from legislated committees. So item 11 is our Parent Involvement Committee report from May 11th, 2021. Trustee Buck, can you bring forward the report?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair Danko. The Parent Involvement Committee met on May 11th. We had a number of different items covered that evening, beginning first with Senior Manager Sean McKillop's presentation on guidelines for social media and platforms the HWDSB uses. So what this means is, so for our schools, oftentimes parent committees or school committees will run Facebook pages, for instance, or Instagram accounts. And so Sean walked us through the code of conduct for social media users, and that the code of conduct for social media will be shared when completed by next school year. So at the startup for all schools and proper use for activism were also discussed. It was also noted that elections will take place in June for the vice chair. Interested members should send their names in to Superintendent Estella Jones by June 3rd. Candidates must be current PIC members. Next, PIC members who attended the virtual presentation shared an overview of the presentation, that is the Education Programming Partnership Consultation. Discussion was concerning speakers coming into schools to provide information around SRO officers that had previously been provided. And finally, we had Amy Relincote, who brought forward who did a presentation on the Hamilton Foundation for Student Success. And the next steps we are looking at to reintroduce fundraising back into schools once we're able to reopen. Trustees will note that we've not been able to do any fundraising in schools this current year, in large part to COVID-19 public health measures. That was essentially put on hiatus. And she gave us an overview of the foundation opportunities and what is available, and that continues to be developed by Amy and the Hamilton Foundation for Student Success. And with that, I would move the report.
Thank you, Trustee Buck. So motion to receive the report, seconded by Trustee Beef. I'll turn to trustees and student trustees. Are there any questions or comments? And you can unmute yourself if you'd like to speak. Hearing none, is anyone opposed to receiving the report? And that passes. Thank you. Next, we have reports from staff. Item 12 is our student trustees and Sagawanagalverdot's 2021-22 report. I'll turn to the director to start us off.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I'll ask Superintendent Paul Denemy, who has a portfolio of student engagement, to walk trustees through the report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair, I'm very excited to bring forth the report and the recommendation for our student trustees and Sagawanagarladots for the 2021-2022 school year. The selection process for both the student trustees and the Sagawanagarladots took place throughout the month of April. The Sagawanagarladots followed the traditional process through consensus building through the student leadership group of CC Rose, who participated in a total of 7 rounds to raise their main speaker, or the Sagawanagarladots. The student trustees election, we had 14 applications and 14 candidates ran from Ancaster, Bernie Custis, Orchard Park, Saltfleet, Sherwood, Westdale, and Westmount. Similar to previous years with our election, 2 student trustee representatives were elected through electronic ballots from grade 7 to grade 12 throughout the system, voting for their top 2 choices and candidates to represent student voice in the boardroom. I'm excited to bring forth the names and recommendations for next year, being Dima Abdel Hafazi from Saltfleet, Kanea Kigi from Bernie Custis, or Sagawanagarladots, Aisha Mahmood from Ancaster High, student trustee. With that, I bring forward the report.
Thank you, Superintendent Denemy. So we'll be looking for a motion to approve the report, and in doing so, approve our student trustees and Sagawanagalverdots for the next school year. If Trustee Bingham, you don't mind moving the report, Trustee Archer is the seconder. I'll turn to trustees and just go through the roll call to see if there are any comments or questions. Trustee Archer?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Bingham?
I just said I'm very thrilled to see the names of the students who are in front of us now. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Buck?
No comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Deese?
I'm just glad to see that we're getting applications from a number of high schools. I know in the past it's been very limited, so and I know staff worked hard to ensure that. So it would be great to see representation from all high schools, but we certainly have a lot more than we used to in the past. So great to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Galindo?
I don't have any questions, just that I'm excited. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Johnstone?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Miller?
No questions, just echoing the same sentiment that it's so nice to see participation from across our system. And as the current student trustee mentor, I'm very much looking forward to supporting these three individuals in their roles and getting to know them and listening to their experiences and what they have to contribute. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Trustee Mulholland?
No questions.
Thank you. Trustee Tutt?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Student Trustee Zakar?
No questions, but I just want to say that I'm so excited for the new incoming student trustees.
Thank you. And I'll echo that. We're very excited to see these new student trustees who've been, and Swackhammer Gaudet, who's been selected for the next year. And I know that we certainly look forward to welcoming them and hope that we can have some opportunities to be in person. I know we haven't had the opportunity to see our current student trustees as much as we would like in person. So thank you to staff who supported the process for the elections and for raising the Swackhammer Gaudet. And we really look forward to meeting our new leaders from our schools. With that, we have the report moved to be approved and seconded. Is anyone opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Moving on to item 13, and that is our school reopening COVID-19 update number 12. Trustees, I'll just give you a moment to go to your email. There is a presentation with some visuals that will help us go through the report. And as you open that up, I will turn it over to the director to get us started.
Thank you. Through the chair. Thank you, trustees, for your patience. We do send this out the day of, as we wait for the most recent update through the Thursday teleconference with the Directors of Education. And typically we do have a teleconference on Monday with the Minister of Education, with chairs and directors. Today's was postponed, but we wait for the most recent information to make sure we have everything updated on this slide deck. So on that note, I am going to pass right over to Associate Director Peter Sovereign. If you look on slide 2, and he'll walk us through, and the members of the team who will be giving high-level updates of each section. To Peter, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. And through the chair, I'm just going to do a quick sound check, Chair Danko.
Loud and clear.
Great, thank you. I will ask trustees could please move to slide 3, and I'd just like to provide a brief overview again of the guiding principles which have shaped our decisions throughout this year as we've opened, reopened, closed, reopened again. The operating of schools in the 2021 school year has really been guided by these 5 principles. They have also guided our initial planning for the 21-22 school year, which we'll hear a little bit more about in a few moments. But again, as a reminder, the 5 key principles: number 1, safety for all. The second, minimizing the disruption to regular school day routines as much as possible. The third, an ease of transition between the potential scenarios, and we know that we've had to shift between in-person, adaptive, and fully remote throughout the school year. The fourth guiding principle is to honor our collective agreements and employee terms and conditions. And the fifth guiding principle is fiscal responsibility in all of the decisions that we've made. I'm going to go to slide 4, and then for the subsequent slides, I will ask each member of Executive Council who has primary responsibility for those areas to just take over, to note which slide that they are on, and at the end, we will facilitate questions. We won't go into detail with some of the slides, but rather refer trustees to the information in the slide deck and then open it up for questions at the end. So on slide 4, in terms of feedback that we've sought from students, from families, and from staff, in the previous update, we did note that we were engaged in some research through McMaster, and by way of update, we'll just let you know that the research and feedback has been completed. The analysis is just being finalized, and a synthesis of the information that we have gathered through this process for students, families, and staff will be brought to trustees in our next update. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Romano, who will walk us through the public health safety measures and vaccination plan. Superintendent Romano.
Thank you very much. And can I just check in with Chair Danko? Is sound good?
You're good.
Thank you. So looking at slide 5, just an update in terms of where we are with public health safety measures. We continue a very close partnership with Hamilton Public Health with daily meetings to check in to ensure that we are doing everything we can to ensure that our classrooms are safe. The daily active screening continues for all staff and students who are currently in a face-to-face learning environment, and that has been quite a smooth process. The cases that I'll talk to in a later slide are only cases of staff and students who are participating in a face-to-face environment at this time. There are a number of meetings, daily meetings, in fact, with public health as we prepare for the event of school reopening in the month of June. So doing as much behind the scenes as possible to prepare for that potential next step, with special emphasis on the infection prevention and control strategies that will need to be in place. I'm going to turn to slide 6. Just update you a little bit on terms of the youth vaccination strategy. And this is certainly one of the most exciting strategies that we've been working on. You may, of course, know that the strategy allows for students ages 12 plus to be vaccinated using the Pfizer vaccine. Students must be 12. So in previous windows of ages that the public health have opened, in those cases you had to be the year of birth to be eligible for that window. For our 12 plus, our students need to have had their 12th birthday in order to be eligible for the vaccine. The province has targeted vaccines for this age bracket for the weeks of June 14th and June 21st. However, the province did open registration early, and those vaccines have actually begun. As of last week, we knew that over 11,000 vaccines had been booked. So we do anticipate them to be on target in terms of that vaccination plan. The strategy does involve students receiving their second dose during the month of August. We do know that when parents register for the vaccine for their children, 12 plus, that they're given a second dose date of September, but that in fact will be addressed as we move through the summer, and we do expect those second doses to be in by the end of August. Certainly, public health have a number of options for families to consider in terms of vaccine, and we continue to support public health with communication. So we do know that there are 3 mass vaccination clinics in the city of Hamilton that when parents go into the provincial call center or the online booking system can be eligible to sign up for. As well, or in addition to those 3 main mass vaccination clinics, we do know that specialized clinics such as the clinic for Black and racialized community members, that clinic has been opened for 12+, and the clinic to support Indigenous community members has also been opened to support 12+. We do expect to see pharmacies expand with additional vaccines. And finally, we are looking at more specialized clinics. And again, we're working very closely with public health in terms of communication. I'm going to now move to the next slide, slide 7, just to give you a quick update in terms of our asymptomatic target testing. We do continue to offer these clinics as required by the Ministry of Education. Our most recent clinic was today. It was held at Sir Allan McNabb, and we're planning for 2 additional clinics in the month of June. When we invite folks to these clinics, we invite staff, students, and their families, and that includes our on-site child care program. All of those folks are invited to those asymptomatic clinics to support them. You can see that the number of tests that have been completed in our schools since the beginning, and out of those tests, we've had 8 positive cases to date. Finally, I'm going to move to slide 8. This just gives you an update of where we are in terms of our cases and our outbreaks for the month of May, and this data is as of May 28th. We have had 6 staff members, 4 students, so 10 cases in total with 0 outbreaks. Certainly that is an improvement when we take a look at the April data. I will note that although we've had 0 outbreaks in the month of May, I did review the 7 outbreaks as requested that occurred during the month of April, and will say that those 7 outbreaks, there were no themes that emerged in terms of geographic area or high priority schools, for example, that emerged from that data. The 7 outbreaks represented schools from Dundas, Upper Stony Creek, the Mountain, as well as the Lower City. So no trends were noted in those 7 outbreaks in the month of April. Again, the data is as of May 28th. So there were a couple of cases over the weekend, but we don't expect to see those numbers increasing much higher than that. And I will pass it to Superintendent Stefanian to speak to slide 9.
Thank you, Superintendent Romano. So I just wanted to take a moment to highlight for trustees some of the work that our social workers have been supporting in our schools. Certainly we know during the pandemic there has been a lot of conversation around children and youth mental health, and certainly it's important that we do have responsive supports in place. So I will share with trustees that throughout this time we have continued to have social work support available to all elementary and secondary schools in addition to remote learning for individual support for our children and our youth. We also have had a number of groups that have been in place, and I'll highlight for trustees just some of the groups that have been providing support. We have had some specific groups for children and youth who are transgender, non-binary, gender non-conforming, and gender questioning. Also groups for students who are Two-Spirit and LGBTQIA+, who are experiencing anxiety and stress as a result of discrimination connected to their gender identity, gender expression, or sexual orientation. We've had a variety of different types of groups that specifically focus on coping during COVID, as well as groups focusing on anxiety and depression. In addition, we have expanded to include groups for families as well as individual groups for parent, guardian, and caregiver. And those sessions focus predominantly on mental health and well-being, including most recently our learning for families on emotion coaching. We do have coming forward in the program report on Wednesday more detailed description of the types of opportunities that have been available for students, but certainly appreciate all of the support and hard work of our social work team in terms of supporting student mental health and well-being at this challenging time. And I believe I'm now turning it over to Superintendent Denemy.
Thank you. And if we move to slide 10, I'm happy to walk through an update on secondary school graduation. As we brought forward to trustees in late March, early April, a plan around secondary graduation, we continue to work with public health on moving forward with our plan to have walk or drive-through graduations for students and their families. These will be done through appointment after school with families and students from June the 14th to the 28th. Students will work through a variety of stations or celebratory areas, such as diploma pickout, photo station, spiritware station, award station, an area to get their diploma and take photos. Valedictorian addresses and award winners will be presented online through an online format, such as website or through video. School plans and graduations have used community feedback through the thought exchange that ran through March to gather student voice. Each local school will be working with their school populations in order to make decisions around videos, caps and gowns, or any online potential gatherings. With that, I will move it to slide 10 for elementary school graduations.
Thank you, Superintendent Denemy. In terms of elementary school graduations, last board meeting we had presented a couple of options regarding whether our students would be in fully remote or in school. And once again, you see that we are moving forward with these different options. In terms of fully remote, our school admin have already proceeded with putting together graduation ceremonies that will be virtual, which will include system as well as school awards. So these are already underway, knowing that we want to have them together for the end of June. Option number 2 was if students were to return to school. I will note that if we return to school, we will proceed with the in-school graduation experience where students would be walking the stage, and these presentations as they walk the stage could be included into the graduation presentation that would be shared virtually. As well with the in-school portion, we had talked about the outdoor graduation, very similar to what you just heard from Superintendent Denemy. These celebrations will take place if we move forward in person, but there is also the possibility, as we are working with public health, that these celebrations will also take place if we continue to be remote. We're looking to find from public health how many people could congregate at these celebrations, and we look forward to being able to move forward with these. And with that, I will move now to slide 12 and elementary transitions.
Thank you, Superintendent McPherson. It's my pleasure to bring a brief update in regards to elementary transitions. Originally, staff had planned to complete a transition of students between remote learning and in-person learning by May 3rd. However, school closure and the shift to remote postpone that process. Formally now, staff has decided to cancel that process, firstly because we remain in remote learning. Secondly, because with the end of the school year now approximately 4 weeks away, it takes almost 2 weeks to transition, the preparations to make a full transition of students moving in either direction. We also appreciate that it is a disruptive process to the learning of students when we do a transition based on feedback from staff, students, and parents. And at this point, with report cards being completed, a shift to a new teacher and new classmates does not support student learning. And with that, I will turn things to Superintendent Ferguson.
Thank you so much. Through the chair, I'm just going to outline the secondary school models that we're planning for September. The first, there are two choices for students. One is a remote learning choice, which is an e-learning model, and students are selecting that or choosing that option right now, and we should have numbers later this week. The other is an in-person learning, and we're following the ministry direction where the school year will be organized into quadmesters, and you will see a little bit further on in this presentation what the Quadmaster Calendar looks like when Superintendent Jones shares that. So there are two 150-minute classes a day for students. So students will be doing 300 minutes of in-person learning, and each class can be organized into two 75-minute blocks. And some classes may have two assigned teachers to ensure compliance with the collective agreement. However, we are continuing to work with our Secondary School Advisory Committee, which includes OSSTF, to meet and refine and finalize plans around what the in-school model can look like. And between the two classes, students will have a lunch, but that lunch, as per ministry direction, initially will be in their classroom, their first period classroom, working towards sort of a collective normalized lunch in school, depending where we're at. Thank you. And I will now move on to summer learning opportunities. I'm just not sure which superintendent is speaking to that.
Thank you, Superintendent Ferguson. It's Associate Director Sovran, and I will just note for trustees, slides 14, 15, and 16 highlight just some of the summer learning opportunities that are already well underway in terms of their planning and the offering. We won't go into any of the detail, but you can appreciate over these three slides, once again, this year, despite many of the challenges, we will be able to offer a number of opportunities for our students throughout the summer, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have at the end of the presentation on summer learning opportunities. So with that, I will turn it back to Director Figueredo.
Thank you, through the chair. And I'd like to close off with the last two slides. On slide number 17, a director's update. We hope that we will receive the revised operational guidance document for September startup. We've been told by the ministry it's coming this summer, and we are planning with the current measures for September 2021. Our assumption is that we need to plan with these measures, and then if they're lessened, then we'll work towards that. We're hearing that they're going to come sometime in early August is our hope. In addition, you heard around the adaptive secondary Quadmaster model for September 2021. Sorry, let me clarify. You heard about the Quadmaster model for 2021. Boards have also been told that if they will be adaptive, which means half of the students come on one day and the other half on the alternate day, the ministry will inform boards if they are adaptive secondary model as of, again, late July, early August, based on the COVID numbers and the data that's occurring at that time. In addition, I do want to flag as we head into September, it's an area that I do want to state that I'm very concerned about something that's critical and very important around our equity work, and the ministry has made a commitment around de-streaming of the grade 9 math curriculum. All the work behind the scenes are being done by our school leaders, our program division, etc. The challenge is the boards are still awaiting the new math curriculum document, and operationally I'm very concerned with that because we would want to invest as much time in professional development, helping our educators unpack the new document, helping our equity department, our program department develop professional learning around this. We've been told through conversations that it's coming soon, and we have flagged the concern that we are now heading into June, and there's a very little time for our educators to be ready. We will do our best, and we know there's resources being developed as well over the summer, but we really are concerned that it's come to this point and so late. When managing such incredible, important, complex change, you would want a critical resource such as the curriculum to be in the hands of our educators and our support staff a lot earlier so we could move our professional learning strategy forward. The next piece we've been told around remote virtual learning for Ontario. Again, just to be clear, as we're planning for next year, as you heard, it's the pandemic. I call it the pandemic remote learning for, should actually say for 21-22, sorry, not 2020-21. Ministry is still consulting and will be providing direction and expectations for all school boards and a potential provincial policy change in terms of where does remote learning fit in Ontario outside of the pandemic. And we know there's been many advocacy groups stating their concern as a permanent fixture in Ontario, but we know that for some exceptions it does meet the needs of some students, but ministry continues to tell us that they are still consulting on this matter. You've heard about the funding, GSN, PPF, so I won't go into any further comment there. And our team continues to plan for summer learning opportunities for our students with the federal Safe Return to Class funding. And the last slide, I just want to highlight our next steps for monitoring. Our board meeting June 14th will be our last COVID update for this school year, and we hope to highlight a few things: our secondary quadmaster model and our numbers around elementary remote. The only third thing we might highlight there is if we will be back in person or not. We did hear today that over the next few days, from a regional approach, there will be some communication regarding whether students will be returning this June or not in person. So we wait for any information this week. Also, Positive Cultural Wellbeing Report going to Program Committee will provide an update of our monitoring around social work referrals, ongoing supports, and summer supports and programs. In addition, attendance will continue to be updated through the Human Resource Committee, and there's one coming up this week. And our Student Achievement Report going to Program will update some student progress, especially around our graduation information as we continue to unpack the midterm remarks from semester 2 and our work moving forward to help our students obtain as many credits as possible. And again, as we know, that any budget report and COVID-19 related costs will continue to go to the F&F committee. So back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you to the director and staff for that update and for the visuals to follow along. So I'll just go through roll call in reverse order. And student trustee Zakar, I'm going to put you at the end if that's okay. I'll start with Trustee Tutt to see if there are any comments or questions. Trustee Tutt?
No comments and no questions, sorry. Just thank you to staff for that comprehensive update. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Mulholland?
No questions.
Thank you. Trustee Miller?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Johnstone?
Yes, a couple of questions. First, thank you to staff for your report. Sincerely appreciate it, as always. As stated during other meetings, I would appreciate getting the information sooner, but also have understanding that staff are trying to bring the report forward to us with the most recent information. So I guess it's just a bit of a balance. With regards to the planning that staff are undertaking for our 2021-22 school year, just looking to understand, do we anticipate having our plans completed by the end of June? That's my first question.
Thank you. To the Director?
Yeah, so thank you. Through the Chair. Our goal is to have as much completed by the end of June. And what I mean by that, number one, that our remote learning based on the data that's coming about parent choice by June 1st, to have that all staffed, and based on the decision by trustees to use some of our reserves to lower class size. Our goal is to have all that completed by the end of June for certainty for our staff and for our community. And then secondly, we're getting all the Quadmaster finalized and just working with our ad hoc committee and OSSTF as we finalize the Quadmaster model. And the ad hoc committee will be working on the adaptive model just in preparation that if we are told early August by the Ministry of Education that we'll be an adaptive model, then we'll be ready to go. And then unlike last year, this school year, this summer, that if there are any changes, especially for elementary, that we'll be consulting with our parents again if they've made a different decision, and that our reorganization will occur at a regularly scheduled reorg time in fall based on our collective agreement. And this fall, it's October 7th. So we plan to have everything as much as possible completed by June, wait to find out if we're an adaptive model in secondary in August, and then execute that plan if need be, and wait for any different public health measures that might be revised. But we're planning with the ones that are currently in place under the assumption that if they change, they'll be lessened. Our goal is to ensure that our families and students have as much certainty over the summer, and our staff have some well-deserved time to decompress after such a difficult year. So that is our plan through the Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. And through the Chair, I sincerely appreciate all the work that staff is putting in up front now. If staff do have concerns that they are not receiving information in time from the province, or certainly hope that you'll communicate that to trustees so that we can make our own locally informed decisions about what we need to do locally, what's best for our kids, or to further advocate to the province. And with regards to the remaining communication to come from both the province as well as public health that we anticipate in August, do we have we already planned to have, I guess, additional staffing resources in place in order to make those adjustments as needed in August?
To the Director?
Yes, through the Chair. The ad hoc committees that are required, led by the superintendents, will be ready. In addition, some of the COVID funding that has been provided has allowed us to maintain some of those staffing levels as well. But I think what's important is our push to June here by trustees, and we appreciate making a budget decision to lower class size, is important. It allows us to add that additional staff now in June, not in August. So that's been a very proactive move by the Board of Trustees, which will help us operationalize by the end of June. And yes, so we will have staff ready to go, and that COVID funding allows us to maintain some of those staffing resources to help execute the plan. Through the Chair.
Thank you.
Johnson?
Thank you for that, and I know that our families really appreciate, and our staff appreciate the stability that you're working to provide. With regards to Quadmaster model, I read in the newspapers that students in Toronto had started a petition to the minister to express that they did not like the Quadmaster model. At the heart of that petition was citing that students were experienced a lot of exhaustion, fatigue from such a heavy focus on, single courses at a time. I'm wondering if our staff have reached out to other boards who did go through Quadmaster this past year and what we are doing to, I guess, address some of the concerns that have been raised by staff and students of other boards with regards to Quadmaster.
To the Director.
So, thank you. Through the Chair, I'll ask Associate Director Peter Sovereign to respond to that question. Thank you.
Thank you. And through the Chair, so yes, staff have connected with a variety of school boards that implemented a Quadmaster model this year, both those who implemented it in an adaptive mode and those who implemented it in a regular non-adaptive mode. Some of the adjustments that you see in the proposed model that are still being worked through include segmenting the day into 4 blocks, so very similar to the way students would be used to 4 periods in a day. We would segment the day into 4 blocks, albeit only 2 courses would occur per quadmester. The direction from the ministry for which we sought follow-up was that next year's model at most would have students interacting with 2 cohorts in a given day. The only way to fulfill that is to either have a Quadmaster model or to have a model where students would only do 1 course in even a further compressed segment, and so over 8 different blocks of the year. This is why we have chosen the Quadmaster approach and also looked at mitigating some of this through trying to establish the day to be as regular to the routine as possible, once again adhering to our guiding principles. Through the Chair.
Thank you. Trustee Johnstone?
Thank you. And so I appreciate hearing that some of the ways that we're looking to mitigate, I guess, there's pros and cons to all the models, but the way that we're looking to mitigate some of the cons is through segmenting the day. I hope that we'll continue to have, I guess, regular check-ins as the school year evolves, as I imagine we'll also hear from our students similar concerns, and I hope that we'll continue to work with other school boards across the province to find ways to mitigate, I guess, some of the fatigue that students have been experiencing. I did have a question with regards to, or I guess a comment with regards to the grads. Thank you for the work being done on that area. With regards to the upcoming Student Learning and Achievement Monitoring Report for next month, will we be tracking, because I'm hearing from from some of our schools that there's a bit of a mix where we have some students who are experiencing the best grades ever. It would be interesting to know, to delve deeper and find out why. So is it because they are able to do better with learning online? Is it because the expectations have changed? I'm not sure if we can get that information for the monitoring report, but I do want to flag that. I did have a question with regards to attendance. Will that be in the student achievement report and I guess monitoring report? And I guess what I'm wondering is, have we noticed any increases or decreases, or perhaps the same in terms of student attendance? I guess over the past, this past section that we're monitoring. So just looking to find out what data will be presented to trustees in June.
Thank you to the Director. And Trustee Johnstone, you're almost at 5 minutes, just to let you know.
Thank you.
So through the Chair, I'll pass to Associate Director Peter Sovereign, who will give an update on what we'll be bringing high level in terms of the Student Achievement Report at the Program Committee. And then Superintendent Stefanian can speak about the data we have around that we'll be bringing around positive culture and well-being report as well. So to Peter, please.
Thank you, and through the chair. So at the program committee this week, we will be bringing an update in terms of the student progress that's being made in secondary schools specifically, because that is the data sets that we do have available to us from the midway point in this current semester. As trustees will recall, we provided a similar update back in the fall, earlier in the year, when we did note that partway through the first semester, we did see some lagging progress. Supports were put in place, and as we noted in our update in the winter, that in fact, by the end of semester one, those supports were in fact effective, and we did see some bridging of those gaps from where progress was halfway through the semester to the end of Sem 1. Similarly, we do know that partway through semester 2, we do have progress indicators that we will share with trustees, as well as the supports that are being put in place, so that as we push towards June and the end of the school year, once again, a similar approach to support every student in terms of making the best progress that they can to culminate this school year. To your earlier question, Trustee Johnstone, we do not have specific analysis of student by student in terms of where they were, let's say, last year or the year prior and where they are this year. As you can appreciate, that would be a very highly complex analysis, but certainly we will take that away with our research and analytics department and see what we might be able to do, if not ourselves. As I said, that is probably a very large, complex analysis. Perhaps there are others at faculties of education, for instance, that are looking at very similar types of questions, and we may be able to leverage some of their expertise. To the chair.
All right. Well, I appreciate that that we would connect with some of our other partners in education if we ourselves do not have the answers there. Just because I think we could be asked those questions. If students are doing well, we should know why. Anyway, noting that I was getting short on my 5 minutes, the director had mentioned concern over when we would be receiving the revised math curriculum. In anticipation that it likely will be late, as seems to be the case with this ministry, what would we be doing to, address that, the concerns with receiving a late curriculum? Would we be looking at, what options would we be looking at to mitigate that, such as professional development? I'm not sure what would be available, so I'll just throw that question out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Johnstone. So I'm going to hold you to that question as your last question. If there's any questions when we've gone through the list and do you happen to have them answered, I can come back to you. To the director.
Thank you.
So thank you through the chair. Yeah, so what I would state, curriculum coming now is late for September startup. However, our program division is ready to engage professional learning networks. I'll pass to Superintendent Bill Torrance because they've been doing some work already with in preparation, so I'll explain what they've been doing in preparation. Also some summer institute options, and then we'll have to be very strategic in the fall around professional learning networks for our teachers who are teaching the grade 9 new math curriculum. So if I could ask Superintendent Bill Torrance to provide a bit of an update of the plan.
Thank you, Director Figueredo. And through the chair, that is correct. Currently, all of our secondary schools have formed a de-streaming learning team that's focused on equity, understanding their learners, their incoming students, and really looking at the conditions that need to be put in place for all students to reach their full potential within a math classroom that will be much more diverse than in our previous streamed model. So that work goes on in terms of creating some mindsets and conditions for success for students. When the curriculum comes, we have already begun to plan to have educators support during the summer with some professional writing and resource work that will create sample tasks and what we would call a scope and sequence of how the new curriculum is best delivered through the course of the Quadmaster to come forward. So we expect to have some resources in place for educators for the start of the school year. We've also have a 3-week summer camp for incoming grade 8 students from historically underserved communities to help them prepare for grade 9 mathematics in September. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Superintendent. Okay, I'll move along to Trustee Galindo. Any comments or questions?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I'm very happy to hear about the de-streaming work around math that's being done at our high schools. Side note, back in the day, I was one of those students that just fell through those cracks, so that issue is very close to my heart, and I appreciate the work that's being done there. With regards to vaccinations, I'm seeing a few school boards offering clinics at their schools targeting students. I'm assuming the decision here is probably dependent on vaccine availability. So my question to staff is, are there any plans or discussions taking place to offer vaccine clinics at our schools, perhaps catered or targeted to our student populations? If I could get clarification on that.
Thank you. To the Director.
Thank you. I'll pass to Superintendent Laura Romano because I know there are conversations and we're willing to support any way we can the vaccination, the student vaccination rollout up to including having them in our schools. But I'll ask Laura Romano to provide an update. Thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair, yes, we continue to work very closely with public health. At this point in time, the 3 mass vaccination clinics is really the most efficient way of responding to vaccine. So what is happening right now is public health has the 3 mass vaccination clinics as well as support through pharmacies, as well as the very targeted community clinics. They'll continue to watch the registration of families and students to those sites, and we're in ongoing communication with them in terms of if we get to a point where we need to pivot in a different way and respond differently. But right now, the mass vaccination clinics are really the most efficient and are doing very well in keeping up with demand. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Galindo.
Thank you. To the chair, I guess my concern there would be accessibility for students that may not have access or the ability to get to one of the mass vaccination clinics. But again, I think as vaccine availability continues to increase, I suspect that we'll be able to get to a point in our vaccination strategy to target some of the students that are perhaps more or less likely to get vaccinated for a variety of socioeconomic reasons or other barriers. On that note, it's actually a good transition to my next question. I'm making this, or rather, does the board or Hamilton Public Health plan on tracking which of our students will have received at least 1 dose or are fully vaccinated by the start of the school year?
To the Director.
Thank you, through the chair. I think that's an important question around tracking and what will be mandatory requirements and what for a voluntary vaccine program. So I'll pass over to Superintendent Romano to give an update because there's been discussions provincially before I go to her in terms of at the local level, public health provincially about what will be the expectation. Are public health units able to track, and is that information even under privacy being able to be shared with school boards at this point, and will there be a legislative requirement to do so? Right now there is no legislative requirement, but I'll pass to Superintendent Romano, who's having conversation at the local level around some of these topics.
Thank you. And through the chair, yes, at this point, the COVID vaccine is not going to be considered under the Vaccination Pupils Act. That could change moving forward, but at this point in time, it is not a consideration. From a public health perspective, as the windows of eligibility continue to expand, it becomes much more and more difficult for them to track populations that have been vaccinated and those who haven't. At this time, we are working very closely with them in terms of taking a look at numbers. We track it on a weekly basis in terms of how many students we have within those population windows, and we check in regularly on that. So there is some data from a public health perspective, but we may not be able to communicate a certain percentage until later in the process. Again, we continue to work very, very closely with public health. But to your earlier question, if we get to a point where we do need to pivot differently and open up different clinics to target the populations that we're seeing are not accessing vaccination, we will do that at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Galindo.
Thank you. I guess with that in mind, I wonder if there is a benefit to try to collect that information ourselves, specifically which of our students have been vaccinated versus fully vaccinated or not vaccinated at all, somehow keeping it anonymous. And I'm looking at this from like a data analysis perspective where if we find ourselves in the position in the fall where there is a need to look at what percentage of our student population is vaccinated, would it be helpful to compare that information to maybe the student census information that we're currently collecting? And will we see trends at that time that confirm many of the assumptions that we're making, that underserved communities will have less access to the vaccine? Is there anything we can do with Hamilton Public Health? That's kind of my train of thought with this discussion, but I'll leave it there and I'll let staff take that away. I don't have any further questions, but I appreciate the work that's being done around this. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Galindo. Trustee Deese.
Thank you. Some of my questions have already been answered. Just thinking about, again, whether vaccines are going to be mandated, but because I know there is talk at universities and some places where they're going to require it, but I assume it's too early for that, or that's what I'm hearing. And as far as underserved communities, I'm assuming, or from what I've seen, that those communities have been targeted, so they are not underserved. Is that correct?
Through the Director to Superintendent Romano.
Could you please repeat the question? I'm not sure if I clearly understood what you meant in terms of underserved communities and vaccination rates. Could you repeat the question?
Yes, sorry. Just, picking up where Trustee Galindo left off was in regards to underserved communities, maybe not getting the vaccines, but my understanding is that those communities are being, clinics are being set up there, and that we are making sure, or public health is making sure, that those communities are being vaccinated. Is that correct?
That is correct. There's a variety of strategies underway to target certain communities for sure. We also have the Vaccine Ambassador Program, which is assisting with sharing information and building trust around the vaccine process.
And through the chair, if I could just interject to Trustee Deese's question and Trustee Galindo's question, yes, a targeted approach. But in terms of access, one of the things that has been discussed around communities who might not have access to transportation, there's been discussions with us around public health, even providing transportation for students and families to get to the MACSE clinics if transportation is the barrier. So we're actually having that discussion and seeing what role we can play, but they are prepared to provide that if that becomes the barrier as a more efficient way to provide transportation to the MACSE clinics where they have the setup. So that is being discussed.
Thank you. Trustee Dees?
That's good to hear. Thank you. And I think my only other questions was I was interested in regards to, we were talking about performance indicators, but I think I'll save that for program. I think that's where that discussion is going to happen. And I think that's it for questions for me. Thank you again for the comprehensive report and all the work that's happening. I know it's difficult, and who knew that we'd still be in this a year and a half later, but here we are. Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Buck.
Thank you very much, Chair Danko. I just have one question around the summer learning opportunities. What is our communication strategy to make sure that every student knows that there are quite a number of opportunities for them there? And, is this something just emails going out? Are we relying on social media? Will teachers be discussing some of the options to their classes, or even going as far as identifying those students within their classes that would benefit from particular opportunities in our summer programming?
Thank you. To the Director?
Yes, I'll pass to Associate Director Peter Sovereign, as he has oversight of learning services, which impacts a lot of the divisions who are supporting the summer learning program. Peter?
Thank you. And through the chair, actually, Trustee Buck, you've named pretty well all of the different venues and approaches for reaching out to students. Certainly, first and foremost, having this information available to all of our principals, vice principals, teachers, school staff is paramount, as they are the most directly connected to students and make these opportunities available to them as directly as possible. We will continue to provide this information through our communications department as well to ensure that the information is available on our website and through our various social media streams as well.
Thank you. Trustee Buck, any follow-up?
No, I appreciate the Associate Director's points there and look forward to receiving those communications in my email inbox for each of my schools. Anyways, no further questions.
Thank you. Trustee Bingham?
No questions, but I just want to again say thank you so much to staff, because this has been such a huge undertaking for the past year and a half, and it still hasn't ended, and yet here we are again with an amazing report. Not even quite finished school yet, and already we're talking about the next school year as well. Like, this has just been, and through the summer, everything off the tubes. This has been massive undertaking, and I just want to say thank you so much to the staff and everyone involved for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Archer?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Student Trustee Zakar?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. I did have at least one question. I think some of mine have been answered. With respect to the elementary transitions that we had planned for May 3rd that it's now been canceled, I was wondering if I could learn more about the communication strategy. Have we let those families specifically know, or is there a system-wide communication? If I could learn a bit more about that, I'd appreciate it. Through the Director.
Thank you. I'll pass to Associate Director Peter Sovereign.
Thank you. And through the chair, actually, I will ask Superintendent Torrens, who has been working very closely on this, to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Associate Director Sovereign. And through the chair, we are preparing a COVID-19 update to the community for later this week, pending any provincial announcements. So we intend to provide specific messaging to all parents at that time. In regards to the cancellation of the transitions. Our principals are aware at the school level right now to be able to support any questions that do come from parents directly from their school communities. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, I guess, about families who were expecting their child to go back in person. That hasn't happened, and if they're hearing what's in the media that there is a potential return to in-person, I guess I'm wondering if that will be a surprise. So I appreciate that there's a plan for that communication and a plan to support our schools, and if there are questions from parents. The second question I had is around graduation supports and celebrating our students who are going to be graduating this year. I really appreciate that there's a number of different options, and we're looking at doing something in person, whether it's stations. The director had shared that we were going to be doing graduation signs, and I was wondering if I could get an update on the timing of those being provided to students and families. To the director?
Yes, thank you. I know our procurement department had purchased them and communications was involved, so each graduation sign would have their, not only the board logo, but the school logo. I will pass either to Jane McPherson, who has elementary, or to Paul, who has secondary, if one of them could provide an update around the plan for them and when it will be delivered. Thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair, the graduation signs are being delivered as we speak. They should have begun on Friday and also today, and throughout this week to schools. Schools are currently closed and not open. We will be looking at distribution of grad signs as we begin the graduation celebrations, specifically within secondary, that begin on June 14th.
Thank you. I know that we're all looking forward to seeing those in the community as we did last year. And my last question is around when we talked about social work supports. I really appreciate learning about the supports that have been in place. Some of the things we've been hearing in terms of concerns for students having these extended remote periods is, what does a transition back look like if our students are not back in person until the fall? I'm wondering if there's any planning for special transition supports for students who have not been in person for quite a length of time as we look to the fall. And perhaps that's early planning, but if I could ask to the director.
And thank you through the chair. I'm glad you raised this question. Through many conversations with some with people in the community, as well as the senior team, as well as some recent research around ensuring that we have a plan for students to return in September that really focuses on an asset lens instead of a deficit lens. In other words, prioritizing the importance of social connectedness, social emotional learning, and well-being. As we did this year, we asked our Equity and Wellbeing Division to develop some resources regarding equity, learn, disrupt, rebuild. We're also asking for an interdisciplinary team that Superintendent Sharon Stefanian will be overseeing because of her portfolio of mental health, including people from our equity department, our mental health department, our early years and program. So we actually developed some resource that helps us really prioritize what coming back to school looks like in the fall, and providing teachers with some key resources to use as activities and lessons around helping students re-enter back into the social in-person learning and focusing on the well-being. So that planning is happening, and there'll be an interdisciplinary group of educators and service department staff, support staff, who will be working on modules over the summer to prepare for the fall. Through the chair.
Thank you. And I'll just turn back, Trustee Johnstone. Were all of your questions answered, or was there anything outstanding?
I just have one request, which is that the chair write a letter to the ministry to highlight the board's concerns around the lateness, the impact of the math curriculum arriving late.
Thank you. So if you wanted to put that on the floor as a motion, but the chair write a letter to the ministry to raise concerns regarding the late delivery of the math curriculum?
Correct.
Thank you. I'd be looking for a seconder. I'll let someone unmute themselves if they'd like to second that.
I'll second it as Trustee Dees.
Thanks, Trustee Dees. Any comments or questions? And I'm not going to go through the list. If you'd like to mute yourself, if you'd like to speak to that item. Hearing none, is anyone opposed to writing a letter to the Ministry regarding the timing of the de-streamed grade 9 math curriculum? Hearing none, that's passed, and I'm happy to do that. Okay, so there's no other action required with regards to the COVID-19 update. Next, we have item 14, which is our school year calendar for secondary, and that's an update. I don't know that we have a visual for that or anything written for that. I'll turn it to the director to get us started.
Through the chair, Trustee Officer Miller sent a revised board package earlier today. It's page 14-1 in the updated package. I believe it was sent this morning, this afternoon. As trustees are looking for it, just want to provide clarity before I pass it over to Superintendent Jones. And the reason why this is an action item, because of our previously approved secondary school year calendar, it was based on a semester model. Because we're planning for a quadmaster, it required us to then review our secondary school year calendar and draft PA day plan summary. So I will pass it over to Superintendent Jones, who will walk trustees through the revisions of the secondary school year calendar and PA day summary. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I just check that the sound is okay?
Yes, it is.
Great. Thank you and good evening. And through the chair, I'm here to present the draft revised 2021-22 secondary school year calendar and the draft PA day summary for approval so that it may be submitted to the Ministry of Education for final approval. As the director mentioned, please refer to pages 14-1 through 14-4 for the detailed report. The 2021-22 draft school year calendars were previously approved on April 26th, 2021. However, since the approval of the school year calendars, school years were directed by the Ministry of Education to adopt secondary timetabling methods that emphasize cohorting of students as much as possible and to limit the number of student-to-student contacts. School boards are required to limit schedules to 2 in-person classes, making contact tracing manageable. In addition, since the previously approved calendars, information regarding requirements for mandatory PA days were outlined by the Ministry for boards to plan professional learning for the upcoming year.
Left.
The 2021-22 draft revised secondary school year calendar on page 14-4 and the draft PA day summary on page 14-3 have been prepared in consultation with the School Year Calendar Advisory Committee, including OSSTF, and endorsed by Executive Council. The draft revised secondary calendar has been prepared in compliance with Ministry of Education Regulation 304 to provide a minimum of 190 school days from September 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. 3 professional activity days must be dedicated to provincial education priorities, and boards may include an additional 4 PA days. The PA days remain the same dates as those previously approved. This results in 187 instructional days, including 10 school days used for examination. So the quadmaster model, you can see the start date is still September 8th for quadmaster 1 and runs through till November 9th, followed by 3 examination days to give a total of 47 instructional days. Quadmaster 2 then begins promptly on November 15th through to January 28th, and is followed by 2 exam days as well as a PA day, with a total of 46 instructional days. Quadmaster 3, should it continue into semester 2, begins February 3rd through to April 14th, and again would be 3 examination days at that time to finish off Quadmaster 3. And then in Quadmaster 4, beginning April 22nd through to June 24th, followed by 2 examination days, but then also 2 additional PA days. The 3 mandatory PA days will focus on school reentry and are devoted to the following topics according to the ministry: health and safety protocols, mental health and well-being, learning recovery and intervention strategies, mathematics, including grade 90 stream math course, anti-racism, anti-discrimination training, instructional approaches to online or remote learning, as well as anti-sex trafficking and anti-bullying, including cyberbullying. Within the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board, you can see that health and safety protocols, mental health and well-being, learning recovery and intervention strategies, anti-racism, anti-discrimination, anti-bullying, and cyberbullying have been highlighted as the focus areas for our board. So the focus of the professional activity days are summarized on page 14-3 and prioritize professional learning opportunities for staff that adhere to the provincial requirements, align with our board goals, and maximize student achievement and well-being. September 2nd will be a focus on health and safety protocols and mental health and well-being for half of the day. And then on September 7th, there will be a focus on the continuous learning and improvement cycle, focusing on learning recovery and intervention strategies, also a ministry priority. And then the system-wide learning on November 26th would focus on safe schools, and on March 4th, again, on mental health and well-being, anti-racism and anti-discrimination. The other half days on September 2nd and 7th will be for occupational health and safety, as well as violence prevention and reporting. In elementary, there will be 2 days for evaluation and reporting. And in secondary, 2 PA days will be for transition planning and implementation. And as a system, on the last day, June 30th, the focus will be on continuous learning and improvement as well as transition. Appreciating the collaborative efforts and guidance of the School Year Calendar Advisory Committee and Executive Council, it is recommended that the revised secondary school year calendar and PA day summary be accepted for submission to the Ministry of Education. Thank you very much, and through the chair.
Thank you, Superintendent Jones. Okay, so for this item, we need a mover and a seconder, so I'll just randomly pick Trustee Miller, if you could move that, Trustee Mulholland to second it, and I'll go through the roll call in alphabetical order this time, starting with Trustee Archer. Any questions or comments?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Bingham?
No questions or comments, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Buck?
No questions or comments, thank you.
Trustee Buck?
Oh, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, I had no questions or comments, thank you.
Thanks. Trustee Deese?
Just one question. It relates to the PA days, and there's a lot of varied learning happening throughout the school year. I'm just wondering, how is the implementation of the learning measured, or is it?
Can you just clarify, Trustee Deese, is that the learning for staff?
Yeah, just during the PD days.
Thank you. To the Director?
So thank you through the chair. depending on the topics, some of the topics are compliance training that are required that people need to sign off. And the other is more adaptive learning. And that's a great question by Trustee Dees, and that's a question that, in terms of monitoring the impact is how does the learning actually impact practice in the classroom? And that's a challenging piece to monitor, and part of that monitoring is done through our continuous learning and improvement, especially when it comes to our graduation and reading goals. So it's the superintendent visits, the principal learning teams, and the classroom visits, and then the teacher network. So it's a lot more anecdotal and observation. It's not as quantified, but what we hope and we expect as we look at our results is that our graduation rates continue to go up, and then our reading scores would continue to go up as well. So those are the lagging indicators that we track and monitor in our board annual plan around that professional learning.
Thank you. Trustee Dees?
Thank you. And I would assume that the same around the learning around bullying and some of those other things. I'm assuming that the goal is that we would see it in the incidents. Is that correct?
To the director?
Yes, through the chair, and more will be coming through that report to trustees around our Safe Schools Action Plan in terms of how we'll be monitoring progress through it. And of course, that falls under our positive culture and well-being priority. But yes, more information to come around our progress monitoring and our tracking of information when it comes to our Safe Schools Action Plan through the chair.
Thank you. Trustee Dees?
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Galindo?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Trustee Johnstone?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Miller?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Mulholland?
No questions.
Thank you. Trustee Tutt?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Student Trustee Zakar?
No questions.
Thank you. I did have one brief question, and that is with the new PA day schedule, if in the event we can shift from Quadmaster to a regular delivery model for the second part of the school year for secondary, would there be any impact with the new PA days? And to the director first, I guess.
Thank you, through the chair. And that is our hope that if things improve in the fall, that boards will have the opportunity, if public health measures are released, to return to a semester 4-course program in second semester. But to your specific question around if we do that and we're able to, is there any impact on where the PA days have been located? I'll pass to Superintendent Jones for that question.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, the PA day schedule would not be affected if we were to return to the traditional semester model. We have deliberately maintained the same PA day dates that align with secondary, and that we have consulted with the Catholic School Board, and there would be no change. It would not impact the professional activity days. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have the report to be approved as moved and seconded. Is anyone opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Thank you. Item 15 is report from Committee of the Whole, private session from earlier this evening. Alternate to Vice Chair Galindo to bring forward the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I bring forward the following recommendation from our private session of Committee of the Whole meeting from earlier tonight, that the Finance and Facilities Committee report from May 20th, 2021 be received. Thank you. Through the Chair.
Thank you. So moved by Trustee Galindo, or moved to be received by Trustee Galindo, seconded by Trustee Buck. Is there any questions or comments? You can unmute yourself if you'd like to speak. Hearing none, is anyone opposed to receiving the report? Hearing none, that passes. I seem to have misplaced the last page, but I think we are in the home stretch for our meeting. One moment. So we are going to move on to oral reports, and item 16A is our oral report from our student trustees. So I will turn that to Student Trustee Zakar.
Thank you, and through the chair. From last Thursday to this past Sunday, the Ontario Student Trustees Association, OSTA, hosted their annual grand meeting. In attendance were the new incoming student trustees, Dima and Aisha, as well as myself. Over several days, many sessions were held in order to support both the incoming and outgoing student trustees with items such as how to pass a motion and boardroom rules. This Wednesday, our final Senate meetings for both secondary and elementary will occur. We have invited the incoming student trustees to both meetings to help facilitate a reflection and transition in order to ease them into the new role. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Student Trustee Zakar. Are there any questions from trustees? Hearing none, thank you for that report. I'll turn to the Director for the Director's report.
Thank you, through the chair. My report will be a brief one to provide some clarity in communication to all staff and to our Board of Trustees in our community. As we started this board meeting through the chair with a moment of silence, I would like to remind everyone that our flags will remain at half-mast for 215 hours as we grieve the 215 children whose remains were discovered at Camp Loops Indian Residential School. And we need to be reminded very close to Hamilton that there was a residential school where lives were lost and children's lives were lost as well that operated up until 1970. We're lowering the flags, and this is done in the deepest respect for the traumas inflicted upon Indigenous peoples in Canada. And at the time of this reflection commitment, we must understand and address the past and present injustices. In addition, we're entering into June, which is Indigenous History Month and Pride Month. But our Pride flags will be added to the lowered flags at school on June 3rd, and will not be raised until June 9th. And we have also been working closely with the Indigenous community and the Indigenous team. And we respect that this pause in preparation for a message about Indigenous History Month, which is in June, will occur until further notice. Through the chair, that is my update this evening.
Thank you to the Director, and thank you for the work in ensuring that we're consulting with our Indigenous team and our Indigenous community and being as respectful as we can as we work through a difficult time while we wish to celebrate and recognize students with the Pride flag as well. I'll turn to trustees. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'll move to item C, which is the Chair's report. And so I guess much of what I was going to say for my Chair's report has already been said in this meeting, including acknowledging what we've heard has happened and has been discovered in the past 2 days that impacts our Indigenous communities and really that revisits trauma on our Indigenous communities who have long suffered. So again, our hearts are with our Indigenous communities, and we know that we need to continue to work towards reconciliation as we work through this. I was going to mention that we will be raising the Pride flag at every HWDSB school during Pride Month, and that will be delayed. The flags will be added, as the Director mentioned. But I think that it's important that we recognize we've heard about some of the challenges our Two-Spirit and LGBTQIA+ students face when we learned about our social work supports in our COVID report tonight. And raising the flag at every school signals that every student is accepted as they are at HWDSB. And so we do look forward to raising the pride flag at all of our schools for this month. We've also heard that we are waiting to learn if our students and our system will return to in-person learning in June. So as signaled earlier, we have heard that we will learn more in the next few days from the Premier of Ontario. I do want to thank staff for their continued readiness to mobilize and adapt if we are directed to shift to in-person learning. And I know that our communications staff are also standing by so that we are continuing to communicate very clearly and effectively as much as possible with their families who are also waiting. We've also heard from Hamilton Public Health, and we heard this tonight, that they're ready to collaborate with us. They have the capacity for timely contact tracing in collaboration with our board if needed. We've already heard about the youth vaccination strategy tonight. One thing I did want to point out is that the ministry has shared there is an intent to provide access to our secondary students or students aged 12 to 17 to get access to those second doses before the beginning of September. So I expect we'll learn more over the next few weeks. If students are booking or families are booking through the provincial portal, right now they would be booked automatically 16 weeks after their initial appointment, which is later into September at this point. So if there are questions about that, we expect to learn more about initiatives to move those appointments up to before the start of school in September.
Left.
And as we head into June, trustees normally are getting ready to celebrate our students as they finish the school year and go through graduations. So this year is looking different, but I appreciate that trustees are preparing virtual messages for our graduates this year, and I look forward to getting to see those. And lastly, as families are asked to make a decision by tomorrow, June 1st, if they wish to register for remote learning in the fall, I do want to thank our staff, and that includes our Superintendent Bill Torrens, Kevin Graham, Simon Goodacre, and our communications team for hosting a virtual information session with a Q&A this past Thursday to help families make an informed decision. So that ends my chair's report. If there are any questions, I'm happy to open the floor up for a moment. Hearing none, I'm going to be looking for a motion to adjourn. Let's have that moved by Trustee Bingham, seconded by Trustee Archer. Is anyone opposed? Hearing none, thank you everyone and have a good night.
Ray Mulholland.
Left.
Good night.
Left. 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 The chairperson has disconnected. The conference will now end.